Hello, coaches. So yesterday we finished the league. We had the last game of the league that we were able to get a win, and we finished the league first place, champions, three-time champions here in Portugal. Great season, a lot of conquests, a lot of things that we learn that we have to develop even more. But finally, I have a couple of free time. I'm having a lot more time in my schedule in the following weeks, and that allows me to finally answer back to your requests on the previous pool in regards to what type of content and what would you like to see next. And most of you answered a bit about my story. Where did I came from? Why did I become a coach? Or how did I become a coach? And finally, I have the time to speak to all of you about that. It's a subject that, of course, I'm really fond of because my story is not the average one, is not a normal story, and I'm more than happy to share because a lot of the things that I speak to you guys on my Instagram, on the posts and on the stories and so on, and on the reels, a lot of that is under the foundations that I developed when I became a coach, and I became so much more than a coach, and I'm really happy to share, and I'm sure that it will inspire a lot of you. For others, it will be normal. For others, it doesn't really matter, but I'm sure that I will be able to touch the ones that want to be touched, and that's why I'm so happy to finally be here sharing this with you. Of course, it will be a longer video than normal, but that's what you requested, so here it is. Yeah. So I was born in Portugal. I have lived in a couple of countries, but I was born here. My youth was a normal youth, playing with the friends on the street. So I'm 35 years old, which means that when I was young, these type of social networks and these types of cell phones that allow us to do everything and to have the world in the palm of our hands wasn't there yet. So I spent a lot of time making friends, playing out on the street, playing football, riding my bike, falling and getting up, climbing trees, making new friends, speaking to people, a lot of things that we don't see the youngsters do these days. That was the environment that I grew up in an average family, an average income family, with a lot of love, with a lot of understanding, with a lot of self development, and that was where I grew in. I've always played football. I always loved football. I have a background of having a grandpa that worked as a director of football for a lot of years in a very big club in Portugal. So it took me every week, not every weekend, but in a weekend, the other we played away, but every other weekend that we played at home, I was there on the stadium seeing the club that I work now. Okay. And so I became very fond of football since a really, really young age. Um, we are speaking about starting to go to the stadium when I was like 5. So really, really young, started to get the vibration, the emotions, the feelings when you win, when you lose, when you win really good, when you win leagues, but also when you lose bad. And I started to be a part of that really young. And I also started to be a part of playing football really young. So I play every since I remember, mostly on the street, mostly on the school. I had a couple of years playing more seriously, but I wasn't a prodigy playing football, and I really soon understood that being a footballer, even though it was a childhood dream, isn't it for most of the boys, it wouldn't be accomplished even if I tried really hard, and I started to turn my focus into school. So I played a couple of years, never professionally, of course. I played when I was still young, so until I was like 14, 13, 14. And then I kept playing, but just for fun, just with friends, just in friendly tournaments and so on. And I dedicated myself to school. So I did my school path normally, and then I went to university, and football was in the back of my head because at that time, even though I really still love to play, I started to look more into the game in more of a knowledge way, more of looking into the dynamics, looking into the tactics, looking what happened on the grass, because I kept going to all the matches. But it was something that I enjoyed it, but I never thought about it as being my way of living. And also people around me were like, yeah, football is something that you follow for a hobby, that you enjoy a lot, but it can never be your life, it can never be your work. So it wasn't something that I really thought about much. Okay. Also, then it came the time to decide what to do after graduating high school. So here in Portugal, you study for 12 years, and then it's up to you if you go for a professional course, if you go to university, if you finish your studies. And pretty normal in my generation to try as much as possible to go and have a degree. And the fact is that when I reached those times, when I finished high school, I was completely unaware of what I wanted to do with my life. And it's something that I keep saying these days. It's too soon to pick what you think that you will do for the rest of your life. It's too soon. You have no knowledge. Most of the kids, when they are 17, 18, they have really low self development, really low understanding of who they are, because society doesn't demand that from them until they become older. But it's something that I'm really fond of. Also, it's about the way that we teach in schools and what we do in school in regards to the subjects that we give. Personal development, leading with emotions, economics, personal economy should be stuff that should be taught in your schools, and it isn't. That's probably one of the reasons why I reached the end of the 12th year of school, and I had no idea what I was going to do. So I decided to go for a course that had good wages, good employment. Even though it was really hard to, I decided to go to engineering. I became an engineer. I went to the best school in Portugal of engineering, one of the best in Europe, really known, renowned. Um, and I took my master there. Okay, so I am a master in environmental engineering. I was quite good in physics and maths, which is the base of engineering. So I did okay in university. During the university days, I developed a lot of things that we can speak one day that helped me a lot in these current days to be a football coach. I developed a lot, and because I was a good student, I was invited. Before I finished my thesis, I was invited to stay in the university as a researcher. So I did a couple of years, not a lot. I did one full year as a researcher in my university, and then after that, I applied for a job request in the National Portuguese Laboratory, which is the biggest laboratory in Portugal, also to work as a researcher, and I was accepted, and I went there, and it should be it should be the pinnacle, or going climbing into the pinnacle of what could be an amazing career. Being as a researcher, I was probably going to be a PhD and probably a professor, and then becoming a full professor. But the fact as I started to work as a researcher and finishing my course, in the back of my head, I was sure that I wasn't sure at all. I was sure that I wasn't sure what I was doing with my life, and I had no idea what I really wanted. So I was going with the flow at the moment. Things were pushing me that way. I kept going, but in the back of my head, I knew that that wasn't the path for me. I knew that I wouldn't stand to do that for all my life, and just the simple thought of it would scare the shit out of me, and leave me paralyzed to think of anything else. And as a lot of adults that I see today, they go day after day trying to avoid, try not to think about it, and they let things go. And that was exactly where I was at the moment. But when I changed my job from the university to the national laboratory, I lasted 1 month because the job wasn't what I expected. The things to develop weren't practical at all. I'm the type of person that loves to do things, practical things. I love, as you already saw, to do mechanics. I love to repair my car. I love to have hobbies of construction. I love to do all those types of things. And I got to a job where I had to sit at the desk programming all day long. And I don't like programming. I know how to do it, but I don't like it. And then I started to have more time to think while I was at work. And after a month, I quit. I was probably on the verge of being really unhappy. I was becoming really unhappy with my life, and I decided to quit. And every day, when I was working at that laboratory, every day on my drive home, I passed to the through the Benfica stadium on my way home, and every day I looked at it, and day after day after day after day, I looked at it, and remember the thought that I had on the back of my head of liking football, of being an hobby, of being probably one of the few consistent things that I have loved all through my life. So that started to come more above and above and above. And the fact is that I decided to quit. I was not happy at all with what I was doing. I felt that what I was doing was completely pointless to society. I wasn't helping no one. I wasn't helping myself. I wasn't happy doing it. The only thing that I had was an average wage and the possibility of having a career that was already created there. I just had to follow the path. And speaking of it as the only, it's quite something. It's what a lot of people try to pursue in their lives, but for me that wasn't enough. And for me, the idea of coming here, it's to create something now that I have. Because at the time, the fact is that I was 24 years old. My self development was really low. I didn't really thought about what my core values were, values and ethics, what I wanted for life, what I wanted out of my job, what do I want to develop throughout my life. I never really thought about those things. So my self development was really low. But the only thing I knew for sure is that I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and I had to do something different really quick, because otherwise I would be miserable for my life. And that was probably one of the changing moments when I started to understand that the only thing that you need to start to change is to give the step that you were always afraid to give. You can change from one day to the other. Of course, when you already have a career, you should try to program things as much as possible. But you can change from one day to the other, and that's exactly what I did. So I presented my resignation letter, and suddenly there I was, unemployed, completely free of time. I had all the time in the world. And on the day that I resigned, I stopped on my way home. I stopped at the stadium where I told you that I passed through every day. I knock on the door, and I was humble enough to go there and to say, yeah, this is me, this is who I am, this is my I have a master in engineering. I have these tools. I have these capabilities. But what I really have is a huge desire to do something different, something that pleases me. And I have a huge capacity of work. If you need me to work 24 hours a day for a month, I will do it, because that was my life in university. Doing an engineering course is like that. A lot of periods you have to study. I won't say, of course, 24/7, because that's too much. But probably in the exam and project season, I had to be on university and to study. I would say 14, 15 hours a day for periods of like 1 month. So it's really hard. The university where I studied engineering is something that is not really spoken about a lot, but it was at the time. I don't know now, because more than 12 years have passed, but it was one of the universities with the highest suicide rate in Portugal. I don't know how it is at the moment, but I bet things haven't changed a lot. And yeah, and so I developed a huge capacity to work under pressure, to deal with pressure, or to pretend that the pressure is not there so that you don't have to deal with it and that you still have to perform. But that was exactly how it happened. So there I was, 24 years old, saying to everybody in my life that I'd quit my job. So I denied the path that was shown in front of me, because everybody around you think, yeah, you're really successful. You have a master in engineering. you work as a researcher, you are invited to work in the national laboratory. Yeah, life is done for you. Your career is there, and you are ready. Okay, you will be very wealthy, and done. We don't need to care much about you more. And now imagine people around you thinking like that, and then suddenly you arrive there and you speak to them and you say, well, that doesn't make me happy. And for me, trying to be happy is one of the most important things in life. So I have quit. I have asked nobody for your opinion on it because I knew everybody would push me down and say, don't do that, that's wrong, don't do it, don't do it. And I decided to do it anyways. And everybody was like, are you mental? Are you for real? Everybody, family, friends, everyone. I might have, I had the support of one or two persons, but it was that kind of support that, they support you, but they are really afraid in regards to the decisions that you just took. So that was me at the time. So not only I had to deal with the professional part, but also the personal part was a bit, I won't, not weird, but people were a bit shocked about the decision, and they were unsure of why I was doing it, and they were pretty unsure of what would be my future like by making that decision. Yeah, gladly, when I arrived to the stadium, I started to see green lights. Okay, so green lights is something that a fond friend spoke to me about. I had another definition of it, but green lights suit completely, which is when life starts to show you a path. Life shows you that that's a green light, you should go that way, or that's a yellow or a red light, which means that you should avoid it. A lot of times our intuition tells us things that we prefer to ignore, but they will keep there until you solve them in the back of your brain. And the fact is that when I reached Benfica, I saw a clear green light, which was the person that I was told to spoke up to, where I said the speech that I just told you. When I got there, it was my gym teacher from the 12th year, secondary school, so high school, which created, of course, a connection, and it was a lot easier with my capability and with my formation at the time that I was accepted as an intern. So that's where and when I started to work for Benfica. I started to work as an intern, of course, no wage. That's the way that I already spoke to all of you about how I feel and why I feel that you should start to work for free. That's really important. You can check it out, the video that I've done just to speak about that. But that was how I started. So I didn't start really early. It was not my first choice, and it was really crazy way to start it. And that's one of the key messages: is it's never too late. Okay, it's never too late to change. To become a football coach, to become a singer, to become a writer, to become whatever you feel that you want to become. It's never too late, and you just need either the courage or to be shit scared of how your life is going to be if you keep following a path that you don't want, and that fear is so high and so big that you have no other way than to have the courage to do what you feel that is the correct decision. And again, your intuition pays a huge dividend in this situation. And a lot of times, which is something that I've changed a lot over time, is that we tend to ignore our intuition because we tend to do the easy life decisions. We tend to do things easy. We tend to do the easier decision. And easy decisions normally give you a hard life. Hard decisions give you an easy life. And a lot of times our intuition tells us to do hard things. And a lot of times we decide to ignore it and we don't do it. Okay? A lot of times we are in that job where our intuition in the beginning told us that our boss isn't good, or the job isn't what I wanted, or I feel unhappy about it, and we tend to ignore it. We tend to start uh, to ignore our feelings about it, and then we start to go out a lot, or to drink a lot, or to create something that kills that emotion, or at least drones the emotion underwater so that we don't feel it and we start to get numb. And when we are numb, our intuition falls a bit apart. Yeah. So that's where I was at the moment. No age, still living with my parents, which was good in a way, but not so good in the other. So it was good because I didn't need the wage at the moment. They were still providing for me, but it was not good because I didn't have enough to start my own life, to get out, and to start to have my own independence. Yeah, but the fact is that that's the way I started, and then I was lucky enough that I was able to travel quite a lot during the university time, which is something that also I think it was really important in that moment, because the fact that I had done Erasmus, that I have worked abroad. I did Erasmus in Italy, so I lived in Italy for a couple of months. Also, while I was in the university, um, I was some time in the UK where I started to do my badges, but at the time again, just for fun mostly. Okay, I wasn't still sure that I wanted to do my life in football, because at the time I was still trying to manage that career, even though day by day I was understanding that probably it was not going to be my path if I wanted to be happy and fulfilled. But because I was abroad, I had a couple of free time on the weekend, so I did like my C, I think it's C. So it's the basic license where I was there. So I was living there for a couple of time, and I started to do it there. And then I was lucky enough to be able to keep doing things in the UK, to meet a lot of different people, to start to share my story, to start to understand people, because at the moment, so before all of this, I was very self-centered. I thought a lot about me, my feelings, what I want, uh, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to the world. And that was a changing moment. That was the moment where I started also to do yoga, because when you do these kinds of decisions, first I was pretty alone because nobody was understanding my decisions. So emotionally, I was pretty alone, and I had to start to learn how to deal with that, how to be alone, how to enjoy my own company, how to not always be thinking about the decisions that I just made. Because, yeah, you made a decision, you quit your job, you start an intern receiving nothing, but then you have to deal with that. And it's pointless to always keep thinking and thinking if you did it well or not. So it's a lot better to know how to calm your feelings, how to calm your mind, how to not always be thinking about that, and now to start to develop a plan of what you were really going to do. Um, Really important things. So a couple of pauses, because I'm trying to be as detailed as I can, because I think that this will help a lot of you gaining the strength to do the changes that you need. Again, to become a coach, or to understand that probably it can happen to some that you're a coach, but in fact what you really love is to be a writer, okay, or a mental coach instead of being a football coach, because you understood that the part of training on the pitch is not so much what you love. Whatever it is, my idea here is to share as much as possible to help you out. So, having to fill my head, okay, because that's what I did at the moment. I was starting to be able to reflect a bit on it, and the yoga helped a lot on that mental part. But the fact is that I was trying to fill my head with work, so that I haven't to think too much about the decision that I was making, if it was right or wrong, because there is no rights or wrongs in these situations. There isn't. There isn't. If you then spend 10 years trying to be a professional coach, and you don't go nowhere, and you are exactly at the same place where you started, okay, then maybe you understand that that was a wrong decision. But to understand that that was a wrong decision, you had to walk through those 10 years to understand it, or to those 5 or 1, or whatever you decide it was the deadline for you to achieve something. Yeah, so that's why it's really important to set objectives, and to, as much as possible, have clear boundaries of what you want and in what time frame that you should define in regards to your own reality. But so again, there I was trying to fill my head with work, trying to develop as fast as I could. So normally people in internships there in Benfica, they do like 2 or 3 days a week. For so training start normally at 5, they end at 10 now, I think it is, and I decided to do all days, and from the beginning until the end. So I spent a lot of time there in the first years, because I wanted to absorb as much as possible as I could. By working every day, I was able to work. Sorry, not every day. There was one day that I wasn't there. One or two, one day. Yeah, and normally on Sundays I only had games with the teams or tournaments with the teams, so it wasn't like really practices. But I did long hours there, and then when I arrived home, I wanted to really understand what was happening. I asked some coaches to record the sessions, not video, audio, okay? Because I had a notebook, I wrote it down every training session. I still have that with me, with some big archives in my home. So I wrote down every drill. I wrote down everything that I could about every drill, and then I recorded all of the sessions. And when I got home at night, I clean everything. I write clean in a notebook all the scratches that I had done in the training sessions, and I would replay the audio on the sessions, and I would match the audios to the drills so that I could understand what type of feedback was given, and then I had the notes about the results. Okay, so coach yelled, "More intensity, come on!" Players started to do it faster. Even though sometimes they did it faster, they lose the ball more often. So details like this, okay? And I want you to understand that I had no contact at all with training before this. Okay, I was enthusiastic about it. I played, so I was coached, but it was at a time where the methodology of coaching was completely different to what I do now. And so understand that I was a blank sheet of paper, ready to write anything on it. That was why I was so detailed in everything that I wrote, because I wasn't still able to create my own knowledge. So I had to absorb all the knowledge that I could from others, okay, from all the coaches that I work with, that I was with, and also for the technical coordinator, which is still our technical coordinator now in the senior professional team that I work with. So it was with him that I started, and he keeps being in my life. It was clearly the person that taught me more about training, but then he also taught me about something else that started to be a focus of my life, which was the human being behind the player. So there I was, first year into becoming a football coach, absorbing everything that I could, and of course that started to be noticed. And one of the coaches that I worked with invited me to be his assistant coach in an under 15s team. So on the Benfica internship, I was working with younger children, so from the age of 4 until the age of 13, but they were doing sevens football and nines football. And right in the beginning, where I was starting, I was invited to an under 15s team to do 11s football. I was really happy about it, and of course I accepted. So one more, one more job, okay, in my portfolio, one more place to start to learn, study, get everything that I could. So I told him that I was really beginner, that of course I wanted to go with him, that I was ready to help him in whatever way I could, and that I really wanted to develop. So there I was, also working with 11s football, and you will understand why I'm always saying that I think that coaches that went up the youth ladder will always be more prepared coaches for every environment than a coach that just coached senior players, okay, or that just coach from under 15s up. No, you learn a lot by going up the youth formation age ranges, because you learn how to develop your own values, you learn how to develop patience, you will learn how to deal with players that are very good, that are average, that are really lousy. And sometimes the players that are really lousy in the beginning, if you keep with them for 2 or 3 years, they become your best players, and that's something that it's completely incredible, the feeling that you get out of that. um, but so there I was again, starting to be noticed because of my work ethics. I was always there. I was always taking notes. I was always asking questions. I was a pain in the ass. I was with a lot of coaches. I was always trying to look and see and understand what influenced the training drills, and that I think that was one of the reasons why I became so good in the part of development of exercises, of understanding the exercises, because I was really focused on the details. Why is it a meter longer there? Why is it a square? Why is it a rectangle? Why do we have the small goals? Why do we have the big goals? Why do the goals are separated by 5 meters and not 6? Because again, engineering mind. So I think it was mostly because of that. Really analytic at the time, really rational, really logical. That was again why I didn't pay so much attention to the human being, which then and now is clearly one of my biggest focus. But probably my engineering mind calling me to action in all those things, on the exercises management, on the exercises creation. Probably because of that, I was invited really quickly to become a technical coordinator in a smaller Benfica school outside of Lisbon, so really close to the stadium, and that's why I really started to develop my human capabilities, my leadership capabilities, because I started to run a school as a technical coordinator, so giving formation to the coaches. A school that started with one coach, okay, me, a technical coordinator, one coach, around 20 kids. And when I left the school after around 10 years, the school was reaching 200 300 students. We had at the time, I think, around 12 coaches with interns, and I have had more than, I would know, I would say 20 to 30 coaches that passed through there. Okay, at the same time, I kept developing as a coach, not only a technical coordinator, but as a coach in the stadium of Benfica, where I was doing my internship. I became a coach, and I had my own team, 2009, borns in 2009, that I started when they were 5 year olds, and I took them all the way until the end of last season, where I left them in the age of 14, so in their first year of under 15s. Um, Also, in regards to that time, I was able to learn so much and develop on them and try exercises with them, and start to develop my understanding of the human being, in this case children, a lot. Okay. Also, because I really love it to work and not to sleep, just work. As I told you, I was in the under 15 team as an assistant coach with my colleague. I kept going with him to different teams, so we were with different age ranges in different clubs. So I always try to have the perspective of working and learning in Benfica, but always trying to, as much as possible, have a parallel team outside of Benfica, so that I could see the environment, so I could see how other coaches work, so I could coach players that were not from Benfica. So I could coach players outside of Benfica, but also see coaches outside of Benfica, in very different age ranges, very different teams, very different realities. And that was probably one of the things that were enrich me, that were more rich to me, as much as possible. Then there was a time where I thought that I was developed in enough with children, with youngsters, with young adults, and again I had to challenge myself to start to work with senior players. Okay, so all along this, of course, I kept doing my formation. I always kept studying, not only for myself and my notes, but always trying to learn outside, always doing courses, because again, I think knowledge is major in points of view, because when you reach a certain level, it starts to be much more about points of view than right or wrong. Okay, and that's really important that you also focus Always keep learning. Don't think that, oh, I know enough. This is enough for me to do a career. It might be, but never stop learning. That will develop you a lot, and that will challenge you a lot. Okay, I normally say that every day you should do something that challenges you, and I bet most of you don't do things that challenge you every day. And when you do 365 days of one task that challenges you every day, you'll be a completely different human being on the end of that year. So as I was saying, also a challenge. I wanted to go into senior football. Yeah, I didn't really know how. Okay, but again, outside of the box thinking, I was like, what the hell? I will go to those training sessions in the beginning of the seasons where they gather a lot of players to see if they're good, if they're not so good, if they stay on the team. Here we call it caption trainings. I don't know. I'm not sure how it's called in English. But a friend of mine told me a really big team in Portugal, which is called Estrela da Amadora, that went bankrupt and was restarting the project, had those kind of training sessions going with a coach that I didn't know at the time. Today is a big friend of mine, and a friend of mine sent me the article saying, okay, they will open practices sessions here in these days at these hours. And I went there. There was a training session going on. I was on the outside looking. I understood who was the main coach, the coach responsible for the situation. And on the end of the session, I stepped down. I went into the grass. I was like, again, this was 6 years after the beginning. I reached him. I didn't know him from nowhere. I just knew it was a coach with the UEFA Pro. I did a bit of research, and he had done a couple of jobs, important jobs. He had work abroad. I had no clue if he was open-minded, if he was receptive to this kind of approach or not. But there I was again. Hello, my name is Andre Val. I have this and that capability. My background is this. I am already working in Benfica. I'm also working in youth teams in other clubs. I have this experience. This is my knowledge. Can I work with you? Can I add something to your team? And he was very happy with it. He didn't told me right at the beginning. He told me to go back in a different day, and after that day, he offered me the position of being an analyst for the senior team. And so for that season, what I had to do was to go see the opponents, record the videos, do a report on them, and fulfill it, give it to him on the beginning of the week so that he could prepare the week of trainings. Because that was not my objective. I don't want to be an analyst. I didn't want to be an analyst, but that was my way to get in. Of course, I kept all the roles that I had before. I kept working with the youth. I kept working in Benfica. So again, completely crowded schedule. I kept working with him, but then I started to also ask him to go to the training sessions, not only watch the opponents. And even though my schedule was so tight, I found a way to also go, because here, at the level that he was working with, the senior squad worked late at night, and so I was able to still put it on my schedule. And there I was watching the sessions, and then gradually I started to give ideas, and he started to understand that I could help him much more than being an analyst. So what did he do? I kept being the analyst, but I started to be also an assistant coach. And it was really tiring days, okay, really important brackets that I put here at the time. And for around 9 years, I worked my ass off completely. Okay, so yeah, when I was in vacations, I was still studying, but gladly the training sessions mostly stopped at the same time. So I had like 2 or 3 weeks where I had vacations, but the rest of the seasons was straight on 7 days of work, or analyzing, producing reports, having my own matches, going to the matches of the team that I was working as an analyst or assistant coach, going to the training sessions. And also really important, people don't live out of nothing. I wanted to keep going with my life. So then I found, so not then, after 1 year, when I started to be an internship coach at Benfica, I thought, okay, I have been a normal worker having my wage for a long time when I was a researcher, and now I receive nothing, and this is starting to be something that I don't like. I was used to have my wage. Now I don't have it. I have to try to do something. Um, so I found a job. Again, I didn't want to go into nothing regards to engineering, and I want to do something out of the box. Again, I thought that, okay, mentally I'm in a weird place. I know I have issues to resolve about the decisions that I took. I know there's a lot of things that I have to work on my mind. I don't want to think too much about it, and I'm filled with work from 5 p.m. later, but the rest of the day I need something to occupy my mind, something that is completely out of the box, something that makes me think, and that makes me focus on something else than my own issues. Okay, so at the time I was clearly running away from my issues, and so I found a job in Portugal, so here in Lisbon, something that I could cope with the training sessions, and that was the idea. This job started as a volunteer because they weren't accepting people at the moment, and I started as a volunteer there. I did voluntary work for like 1 month, and then I was invited to do a paid internship there, and it was something that also changed my life, and I wasn't really expecting it. And now it's a place where I call home. I do some posts and some stories around it, which is in Bairro Cova da Moura, in Amadora, in an association called Youth Mill, Moinho da Juventude, and it's basically, I think, in the USA, in the UK, you call it projects, which is like the favelas in Brazil. Okay, so neighborhoods that have a really bad reputation for crime, for drugs, for all those bad things, and that's what I decided to do. I decided to go there again, knock on the door. So don't forget, this is in the beginning. After knocking the door at Benfica, I knocked on their door, and I was like, "Can I do some voluntary work here? I'm really good in teaching kids in regards to their studies. I'm really good teaching maths, biology, physics, chemistry, those weird things that kids never like. I'm your guy. I can do it for free. I need to occupy my mind, and then we'll see how it goes." And of course, it's not very common to have people with my background and with my knowledge in this type of work, and they were really glad. And I found like a second family. There, I wasn't judged. I saw a lot of stories that started to give me um, a true idea of what life is, because my life at the moment, even though I thought I was going through a hard moment, I started to understand what really is a hard moment for the life of somebody, or for the family of somebody, for having to have 2 or 3 jobs like I saw there, to be able to sustain your kids, to be able to put food on the table, to have to make really tough decisions like, should I educate my kids and quit one of my jobs, but I won't be able to feed them properly on the end of the day, or should I let the street do most of the education, and have the capability to put food on the table on the end of the day? And these were the kind of choices that I saw that people had to do. And here, this was completely mind changing, because, again, as I told you, I was focused on my own belly. I was really ego centered, self centered. And this really started to open my mind to self development again, to other people, because then I started to work with the children of those same people. And when they go there to get the children, or sometimes they didn't, it had to be us to take the children home, because their parents weren't still there at 8 in the night to be able to dinner with them, to speak a bit with them, to speak about the school. I really started to develop a lot, and it leaves me really emotional, because even now I still work with them on a voluntary basis. So because then, as I told you, I was offered to stay there as an intern, a paid internship, and when my paid internship ended, I was offered to stay there, and of course I accepted, and so I had also that job besides all the football jobs. So my normal day started at 8, finished at 10:30, and then when I arrived home, as I told you, I studied a bit, um, and then I slept for a bit. I'm speaking for 44 minutes at the moment. I should have done this in a different way. I should have done a live session with all of you guys there, giving your feedback and your comments. It would have been really fun. I'll do a couple of live sessions these days. But yeah, yeah, it's most of it. It's already counted. I will do a video because this seems really, by me telling the story seems really light, but the fact is that it has been very challenging, and in regards to your personal life. So the fact is that I won't hide it. It was my personal decision. I decided that for those 10 years I wouldn't have a personal life. I lost a lot of friends. I lost most of my friends. That's a fact, because I wasn't there. And if you don't nurture the relations, you will lose them. And that's what it is. Yeah. I had a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of relationships that didn't work. Normal. Today I found it completely normal, even though at the time probably I thought that people don't understand. No, but I never really explained to people how my life was and how chaotic my schedule was. But I was willing to do those sacrifices. But I wasn't still aware that other people have to really understand what I was doing for them to decide if they were willing to do those sacrifices. Also, the time spent with my family, really short, and that is something that it's still true these days. A lot of times I miss birthdays, I miss really special occasions. The last 2 years I arrived home from traveling 2 days prior to Christmas, but now I see it as my life. I love it. My partner understands it completely. She met me as a football coach. She understands the reality. Um, but of course that also brings you some self challenges, which is all the time that I have free, I don't go out and have fun on my own. No, I do family stuff, because that's who I became, who I decided to become. Yeah, it's really demanding, but if you want to have a family, you can, of course. You just don't, you cannot be self-centered, and you have to understand that you have to share everything, and that everything should be done in a whole. You have to speak and to make your decisions with somebody else, if that's your situation, of course. But we'll do a session, a live video, just about the sacrifices and the personal life details, and how do I deal with it, and what's common in it. Common for me, of course. Okay. What's common for me might not be common for you at all. But as I was saying, going back again to the story. Sorry about this going back and forth, but this story is quite long already, and it's normal that while I'm speaking, I remember a lot of things that I didn't remember when I'm speaking about them here. Okay, so there I was again, analyst, assistant coach. There I was for 1 season, and then I kept working with that coach for a couple of years. He became a great friend, because when you are working in this type of environment, it's better that your staff becomes a part of your family, and those become a bit of your friends, not the players, but the staff that you work with day in and day out. And that is the situation. We are still very good friends. We speak often. I know his family. He knows my life, also my family. And we became really good friends. And it was because of him, because I kept working with him as an assistant coach. Then he decided to leave because of family, so that he could spend more time with his children. And he decided to become just a technical coordinator. And I stepped up as the manager, as the coach of the senior squad. Not the same where we started, but one where we moved to then. And that was how I became a senior coach, where I spent a couple of years. So I worked with senior males with him for, I think, 4 to 5 years. And I still, as I told you, working as a technical coordinator for Benfica, working as a coach for Benfica. When I started to work with senior players, I stopped those assistant coach jobs in youth formation in different clubs. I already had 6 years background of that. And then I had the senior team, where I stayed with male senior players for those 4 to 5 years, until there was the opportunity to go to the professional team of Benfica, women's team, in this situation where I am until now. Yeah. Also, because I'm a man of words and I like to take things to the end. As I told you in the beginning of the job in the professional women's team of Benfica, I kept doing my technical coordinator job because I didn't want to lose it, or to lose it, no, to pass it to someone else in the middle of the year, where things would be completely chaotic. So I was there until the rest of the time, giving formation to, again, a colleague, a coach colleague that is one of my biggest friends. Also, he became one of my biggest friends, and I also took the kids that I told you about of our team in Benfica until their last, their first, after their first year of playing 11s football, so until they were under 14s, so that I ensured that I fulfilled that formation part, and that would prepare them to become very good players in the under 15 squad, and from them give them the wings so that they could keep flying. Whew, quite tired. No, I'm joking. Really, really a pleasure to share my story. You asked for it. I'm sure you weren't expecting 50 minutes out of it, so you should. I hope you got some soda, no, some water or some tea, and some popcorn, because it was really young. But yeah, that's my story, more or less detailed. Of course, there are things that when you are speaking here, you forget about it, or you don't give all the details, but the brief resume or overall thinking about it is that it wasn't easy. It was a big, big, big struggle. It still is. I still face it like that every day. For me, every day is a day that you cannot waste. Every day is the way that you have to give your maximum. People are tired. Sometimes you are not as motivated as you wanted to, but then that's when and where consistency has to come and consistency has to show. Okay, um, so take advantage of all of your days. Fact, you never know which day will be your last day. You never know which moment will be your last moment. You never know when's the last time you're going to see somebody you love, and that's really something really important for me, because we'll also speak about that further on, so that I don't give you everything in one video. But along my path, I become really fond of yoga, as I told you. I become really fond of meditation. I become a stoic, so I follow stoicism. I become not exactly a Buddhist, but I follow a lot of the principles of Buddhism these days. Yeah, so it changed me a lot as a person, and it was the decision of resign without nothing, without a net under my feet, that completely changed my life. So sometimes what we feel most afraid of is what really will start to make us living. It's what will really start to make us fulfill our purpose. Understand that we all have a purpose here. Understand that we all have tools, and we all have things that nobody else has in the same way, and that those things are needed for mankind, and that you can become great and what you were born to do. But to be able to become great in what you were born to do, you have to allow yourself to do, to try, and to see if that's what you were born to do. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed it. For me, it's lovely to share this, and if I can help you out, I'm here to help you out as a coach or in your personal development. So let me know if you need me, and I'll be here posting a lot more in these days, because finally I have some free time, and the next big post, it will be about all this project, all that I'm doing, why am I doing it, and who is it for. Okay? Thank you. Bye.